KFAPC's University from Poland. She is dealing with the question of ethics, with the EU legislation, and she is bringing into our environment some new knowledge based on the research she made, and concerning the number of participants, there are only two possibilities. The first possibility is that Slovenes know everything about ethics and will behave ethical. I'm not quite sure, but the second possibility or reason is that Slovenes are not interested in ethical behavior. So I hope with the help of our guest, Dr. Anna Jaran, we will bring some new knowledge in our economy, in our community. And Dr. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, thank you for having me here. I'm very glad to be here in Slovenia and to share my experience with you, my observations. I had an opportunity indeed to conduct a research in Poland on ethics in public administration, which to my understanding starts to be the more and more discussed issue, not only because of the signals that we have from the European level that require member states to implement some ethical standards in this specific sector of public administration, but also because from what I could see, more and more member states have decided to initiate this discussion about the importance of ethical standards in the public administration, in the public sector. So today I'm going to discuss the topic of ethics and its presence in public life. I'm going to concentrate on the application of universal ethical principles in public domain. And what I wanted to say at the beginning is that today in the morning I had a very interesting session with your students here, and I was very impressed by the discussion we had where we discussed the contents of codes of ethics, and we have debated the necessity of implementation of the codes of ethics in the countries in this public domain. So on the one hand, I would like to share with you the observations we had today in the morning, but also, as I said, I would like to share with you my experience of how ethical codes are introduced in public institutions, which has been an issue of my latest research back at home. But before that, I would like to take a few minutes to present some general observations on the topic, and I would like to invite you to discuss and to debate this question. I'm sure the public sector here in Slovenia cares for this issue. I saw your code, the Slovenian code of an ethical code for public administration. The question is of awareness and of implementation of such instruments, but it's always very difficult, and it always takes time before we understand how the system works and what we can require from the system, what we can gain from implementation of such principles and values. So what flows from our workshop today in the morning, and what flows from the research I have been conducting, is that we do understand, we do have a common understanding of ethics, obviously, but what we consider as ethics in public administration is divergent. In some countries, the codes of ethics, they contain mostly the sets of principles that supplement existing administrative codes, administrative law. In other countries, on the other hand, the codes of ethics, they include rather codes of conduct, where either the desired standards of conduct in performance of public services is described, or where a set of prohibitions saying what kind of behavior of conduct is forbidden in the exercise of public duties. But before I go more into the codes themselves and their characteristics, I would like to say a couple of words about administration, the public sector, its specificity, which also explains the perspective of ethics I'm trying to convey today and trying to discuss with you and trying to analyze. So, when one thinks about public administration, usually the first thing that comes in mind is the execution of power. The power meaning the political will. The political will which is defined at this political level. So in these terms, civil servants are there to implement political decisions, either to prepare new regulations or to make sure that the existing regulations are implemented according to predicted rules and procedures. But what is often underlined and goes together with this execution of power as an attribute of administration is that public administration and civil servants especially do perform a certain mission. And this mission is serving their country. The mission to serve the country and to perform one's tasks in the name of the state. So the civil servants do take care of the whole body of laws that are existing in the legal system in the country, including the constitution, the highest and superior act. And they also make sure that the public funding that goes behind the whole body of laws and regulations that need to be implemented in reality, that these public money are spent in an appropriate way. And this is this execution of the political will, right, of the policies that are decided on the political level, which then needs to be translated by the administration and incorporated in the reality. So now this is a huge responsibility. This is a privilege and a burden that is imposed on administration. So civil servants are empowered with great responsibilities, but they also should be aware of the authority that they are executing. And this is not their personal authority, a personal authority of a civil servant. This is not an authority of a politician who draws and kind of gives the main goals of how policies should work, or the main goals of the state, but this is the authority of the state. Civil servants have this express functioning of the state. And this is why they provide the core for the existence of the state. You can imagine, and we do have in history examples where the state was not functioning on a political level because of wars, because of different execution of powers, yes, but where the administration was trying to keep the state active. And Poland is one of the countries which do have this history of underground administration working for the sake of the state. So for us, it's something that we can talk about and we can feel. We can even remember it because it hasn't been a long time ago when we have faced this situation in history. So this is to say, to show how administration functions in the state, that it implements and exercises the authority of the state. And even if we take the etymology, so the meaning of the word administration, we can feel this characteristic, right? Ministrare in Latin means to serve. Administrare means to operate, to manage, or to execute. And it is very different from gubernare, which means to govern. We have these three very separate meanings. Administration is the one that organizes, that rationalizes, that improves, that fosters the common good, that cares for the common good, defines it. So administration implements and executes the policies that are decided elsewhere. But as I said before, the administration does not operate in a vacuum. The politics and political decisions are defining the work of the civil servants, right? The politicians give the incentive for administration to work. They guide civil servants on one hand, but on the other hand there are citizens for whom the public administration is being called. At the end of the day, public servants, state functionaries are not there to serve politicians, but they serve citizens. They serve the state. The society. So, and this idea is expressed in an idea of a ministerial role of civil servants. So, meaning that civil servants serve both the state, understood as an organization, and they serve, at the same time, they serve citizens. They serve the state in realization of envisaged plans and envisaged policies, and they serve citizens throughout implementation of procedures that are compatible with laws decided on the state level. So civil servants, they operate in two spheres: the sphere of political will and the sphere of civil expectation. And in this picture, administration not only executes and implements the political decision, but it is also the space where the power comes to reality, where it is actually executed, exercised. This situation not only provokes clashes between the two, political will and civil expectation, but it is also a sensitive area where misconduct and where corruption can easily take place. And there is a conviction, at least, that a certain panacea to solve this conflicting situation is an adoption of codes of ethics for civil servants. With all its strengths and weaknesses, but this code of ethics would be then understood as a spine, as a core of operation of public administration, as something that public administration can rely on in the execution of its tasks. The code of ethics, what I understand by meaning that the problem solving can be an adoption of a code of ethics, would be put in more general terms by the use of the term ethics of implementation of ethics in public management. And what I mean by implementation of ethics in public management here is a situation where we establish some standards of desired conduct of public functionaries, and they can be contained in codes of ethics. Or on the other hand, this application of ethics in public management can be also defined by a certain sensitivity of functionaries, of public functionaries, to fundamental values of public conduct. Both the sets of standards and certain sensitivity are part of ethics in public management, but the two are exercised in a different way. Codes of ethics, as set of standards, they constitute the spine, the core to which presumably guarantees guarantees proper execution of proper power, public power. But sensitivity of public functionaries comes from another source. It is an inherited and integrated attribute that every single person, every single civil servant needs to develop in his or her own mind, right? It's a mindset. Moreover, it is not only the willingness of the person, the civil servant, to develop this special sensitivity towards execution of public power, but it is very hard to impose any sensitivity of this kind. Well, you cannot make a civil servant a loyal state functionary. You can only expect that he or she would be loyal and reliable when she implements governmental policies. Or you cannot make a person impartial. You may expect that a state functionary avoids conflict between public and private sector when he or she executes power, or he or she is dealing with the division of public funds or whatsoever. The other thing is that you can demand the person to be impartial, or you can demand the public functionary to be loyal. You may do so through legal regulations when you implement the laws, where you say in execution of public power that the civil servant needs to be loyal, etc., or impartial, or you define your principle. You may want to support it by ethical principle being developed in an ethical code as a supplement to legal regulation, but you cannot say, now the civil servant is impartial, we have trained him and we can prove it by a certificate that he or she is loyal or not. And this will only be verified in reality. And the verification of reality comes either through legal regulations or by it is fostered, supplemented by ethical regulations. So, in this understanding of sensitivity of functionary, I would say that ethical conduct in public administration is something that needs to be internalized still. You cannot impose it, you cannot train it in a person. It is not a matter of knowing procedure, it is not a matter of applying it correctly, working as a robot, but it is a matter of integrating the principles in your day-to-day work. And this is to say that I'm not making my point today about ethics in public administration understood as overall reflection on morality or ethical doctrines or moral beliefs. I'm talking here about deontology. I'm talking here about values and principles that guide and assess our choices. So they say what we ought to do, what civil servants ought to do, should do in their performance of their duties. So I'm talking here about such principles as principle of decent behavior, principle of loyalty, principle of political neutrality, or impartiality. These principles, but also values, have an immense importance when we talk about functioning of public institutions. And ethical conduct is important in the professions that require public trust. So you can imagine we are not talking here only about civil servants that we publicly trust, that we assess them with public trust, but we also talk about other professions such as doctors or teachers, who are also in a way employees of the public sector if we talk about provision of public education or client who comes in and starts and changes the position. I mean the citizen who becomes a client, not somebody who disturbs administration and wants something from administration. I don't know if you know what I mean. We have also, I think, the common understanding of inherited functioning of public institutions such as post offices or decanates at universities, public hospitals or healthcare. So when you enter this institution, more and more often you are treated, or you at least should be treated as a client, not a patent. I'm not sure if there is a good word in English that describes the situation, but this kind of different understanding of the relationship between a citizen who comes and claims information or a service.
Yes,
from the public.
somehow according to the new approaches, the public administration should be the service for the citizen and not the opposite way.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
say so.
And this is where it comes from, right? This ministerial role of public administration. They serve us, the citizens. So, and this is also important.